Welcome back, artists. We are talking about principles of design, and this week we're going to talk about rhythm. Now, rhythm is a principle of design that refers to the way that you combine elements to produce the appearance of movement. Rhythm provides a path for the viewer's eyes to follow. There's another element or principle of design that is movement, and rhythm and movement differ slightly. Don't get them confused. We'll talk about movement at a later date, but for rhythm, it's the way that we use the objects to lead the viewer's eye through our work of art. And we usually use something that's repeating, and we'll talk about that and the different ways that you can use rhythm. So what we're actually going to do this week is we're going to skip through to the different ways to create rhythm. Let me get rid of my face here. So there are three types of rhythm. There is regular rhythm, which is creating a repeated pattern that causes your eye to just look through a work of art. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to fill the whole page with a repeated rhythm. There can be other things in there, but you're going to have something that repeats that's the same. Then there's irregular rhythm, which means that the elements repeat in an unpredictable manner. So just like in a real forest, when you have trees, nobody planted those trees. They just kind of grow randomly. And so these trees, even the trees in the background that are yellow in color, create this irregular rhythm. It kind of leads your eye through the work of art. So for this one, I would say that I noticed the dark trees first, and then as I'm looking through these dark trees, I say, wait a minute, what's in the background? And I look and see these yellow colored trees in the background again, which are irregular. They're not placed in an exact pattern. Then we have progressive rhythm, which is elements that get bigger or smaller, like loud and soft music, and that creates a rhythm. So here you just simply have these three flags, one on top of the other, that creates this visual rhythm. The whole artwork is just taken up with this idea of rhythm. But if we go back in our slideshow here to our first one, this is also a progressive type of rhythm, because you see these fives are repeated, but they're getting smaller. And so what it does is it leads your eye into this work of art. We talked about, when we studied emphasis, we talked about leading lines, and you also have these leading lines that help our eyes go back into this painting by Charles Demuth. So this is progressive. This right here we would call, I guess you could differ and say in one respect it's irregular rhythm because they're wearing different clothes, but it's probably more like regular rhythm because they're all in the same position. They all have their picks above their heads. So there's this regular rhythm that leads your eye through this work of art by Gerard Cicado. And so you have this rhythm. Again, this one's more of an irregular rhythm. I would say the faces are probably what creates the rhythm, but they're not placed regularly. They're not really in like lines marching. So there's an irregular rhythm to this. There is regularity in the way they're dressed, in the halos around their heads. In classic artwork, this was how they created halos around what were usually saints or angels. These are obviously angels with wings, so an irregular rhythm there. So that is our element of art, rhythm. And to keep in line with the idea of rhythm, our theme this week is going to be music. That means you could do musical instruments. You could be inspired by a song. If you're interested in an artist who used music to inspire him, and he actually tried to make works of art that looked like what he thought music would look like. Look up Wassily Kandinsky. He was an abstract artist, but not so abstract that you couldn't tell. He used a lot of shapes. We've looked at some of his works when we were doing the Elements of Art. So if you're interested in doing something a little more abstract this week, you could do that. You could do something like an album cover of your favorite musical artist, but just keep in mind that it has to show rhythm, so that whatever album cover you pick, you've got to find one that actually shows rhythm. This idea of leading your eye through the artwork, usually through some sort of repetition. So you cannot have music notes in your artwork. They're too simple. It's too obvious. It's really kind of boring. So use something else. Think of other ways that you can use music to create your sketchbook work of art this week. So I look forward to seeing what you guys do. And until then, that is your principle of design, rhythm.